Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSB. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 17th of June 2023. We'll get straight to the front line, to the northeast sector, which is the Kupiansk to Svatova to Kreminna front line. As you can see on this map, Kupiansk is up here, Svatova, Kreminna. That is on my map something like, oops, no, doesn't look like that. Looks like this. So you have Kupiansk at the top, Svatova here, Kreminna down there. Now, sorry, there. What I need to remind you about this map is that there are two lines on it, as you can see at the moment. The blue line refers to the Russian defensive line, as does the red line, but the blue line is the pro-Ukrainian mapper, Andrew Perpetua, and the red line is Syriac Maps. It's a pro-Russian mapper. I was due to have a chat with Andrew Perpetua about the mapping, about the front lines, this afternoon or this evening UK time. However, I've had to reschedule that. I double booked, so that will happen on Monday now. Apologies for anyone who was looking forward to that today. Nonetheless, let's go to Stelmakivka first. There's been a repelled attack there, as according to the Ukrainian General Staff. Cherevati also stated that Ukrainian forces repelled 5 Russian attacks in unspecified areas of the Luhansk Oblast. So that's somewhere up and down here, 5 attacks. In other words, not a lot is going on. We'll now take a look at activities further south, past Kreminna, past the forest, past Bilohorivka, just not hearing anything about any of these places. And then we're coming to the larger Bakhmut area. We'll see what the ISW, for example, has to say about that. So, Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations near Rozdalivka, Orikovo, Vasilivka, and Stupochki. So the Ukrainians are claiming the Russians are attacking near Stupochki, which is all the way back over there, or towards there. So whether that's in this Klishchivka area or somewhere, I don't know, further north, I don't know, but that's what they're claiming there. Orikova Vasilivka is this area, and then Rozdalivka is all the way up here. So some 3 different areas for Russian attacks. That's what the Ukrainian General Staff is saying. Let's look at what else is said. Syrsky, the Ukrainian commander, the Colonel General, stated that Russian forces are moving some of their most combat-ready units to the Bakhmut direction. He also stated that Ukrainian forces are occupying positions in dominant heights and forest areas and are pushing Russian forces out of positions in the Bakhmut area. That's just something I reported on yesterday, how the Ukrainians do have the height advantage around Bakhmut. Mill blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces are advancing on Bakhmut's flanks and conducted attacks near Klishchivka, Kurdyamivka, and Ozaryanivka. So that is, again, what we've kind of heard. There doesn't seem to be any mapping changes, but it claims that Ukrainians are making gains somewhere. Klishchivka general area, Kurdyamivka, Ozaryanivka, so there's activity taking place down there. Right, let's check another couple of the sources. So Kenneth Gregg here, the Finnish fighter in the general area. I don't know exactly where he is, and take what he says with a pinch of salt. So to the fronts themselves, at Bakhmut, the Russians have sent in a lot of reinforcements, and they have started to build up defensive lines behind Yahidna and Klishchivka. Most of the reinforcements are Shoigu's Storm Z, i.e. cannon fodder, so these are convicts. At the same time, our artillery is moving in to the ridges we have retaken, which in turn means that very soon we will start pouring shells over the enemy positions. And then there is the claim here, well, just a bit of footage of the Wolfpack platoon, part of the 3rd separate assault brigade, showing Russian positions that were taken on the outskirts of Bakhmut. It's quite an extended bit of footage, this, but there is some footage coming out of Bakhmut. As you can see, they're fighting in the trenches. It's still quite damp in the area. There was some rainfall, I think, somewhat recently. So there, yeah, as you can see, lots of activity still going on, but slow going. There's some geolocated footage here that the ISW indicates. If we go back, so where was that? A geolocated footage published June the 16th indicates a limited Ukrainian advance west of Yahidny. So we have Yahidny is here, and this seems to be one of the main areas of activity. There's moved towards Bakhmut, fighting on the outskirts of Bakhmut. Not really sure what's happening there at the moment, but at the same time, there's quite a lot of activity here. Just north of Bakhmut, and of course that would be ideal for the Ukrainians if they could cut off this main supply route into the north of Bakhmut, just at Yehidny. So that has been geolocated. It seems to be Ukrainian presence at this position. I presume this is where the Ukrainians are and not the Russians. It's quite difficult sometimes to work out when you've got a mortar team acting on the Russians. Is this where they are positioned or where they are hitting? Anyway, let's just put that in. And that is, yeah, so I assume that's where the Ukrainian mortar team is, in that tree line there. As you can see on that trench line.
Як можна швидше.
Around there, some trees just behind there. Anyway, that's been geolocated to that position. So that doesn't tell us anything particularly, other than the Ukrainians are actively using mortars and engaging in combat operations in that area, and putting pressure on the Russians in Yehidny. So that is Bakhmut. Not any mapping changes as far as I can see. And we come further to the south to Adiivka. Now there is a claim here from War Mapper. So if we look at Adiivka, we have the town there, and then we have Bakhmutivka here and Novoselivka there. So War Mapper has the Russians pushing just to the west of Novoselivka. Near Adiivka, assessed Russian control has been expanded west of Novoselivka. I've not got that on any other map, but to be honest, sorry, I've not seen that change on any other map, but I think that change is already kind of here. We've got Syriac maps really indicating that area is already under Russian control, and Andrea Perpetua is there or thereabouts. So it may be that the Russians have made some small advances there. There's activity there, but I'm not sure that War Mapper map is anything hugely different to what I've already got. As far as Avdiivka itself is concerned, the ISW says unsuccessful offensive operations near Adiivka, Stepova, Marinka, Krasnohorivka, and Novomykhailivka. So a number of different places there. Krasnohorivka is there, and Stepova is just the other side of the railway line. Remember, the Russians were trying to push across the railway line when they made these advances through Krasnohorivka over the last couple of months, and then they got sort of pushed back. This is quite important for the Ukrainians to keep. They don't want to be encircled too badly in Avdiivka. That's the importance of Severny and Stepova. So possibly fighting around there, but not too much in terms of claimed changes. Millblogger claimed that Ukrainian forces made limited advances near Novelska. Now, I know that happened at some time previously, over the last week or so. I don't know how timely this is from the ISW, whether that's representing some activity that I think I indicated previously, or whether that's from the last 24 hours. But anyway, there could be some Ukrainian advances in the Novelska area. So we come away from Avdiivka, not too much to report, and come into Marinka. Of Marinka, no report. I'm sorry, Kenneth Gregg says that. So where was it? It's Marinka in turn is now a new meat grinder, like Bakhmut 2.0. We have heavy losses, but the Russians have huge ones. They've managed to advance a little bit. This is a battle for a city that now consists only of piles of gravel. Even the ruins have been shelled. There are only basement floors left where soldiers from both sides have their quarters. Okay, so Marinka. Now, the ISW says the Chechen Republic head Ramzan Kadyrov claimed that the Chechen Akhmat Special Forces control most of Marinka, and yet we had reports that the Akhmat had pulled out of Marinka. So there's something not quite right there. Either they are there and controlling most of it, or they're not there and they pulled out to support other areas of the front line. So I don't know. Who knows? But there is tough fighting going on in Marinka. That is certainly certain. Let's now move on to Vuhledar. We come down a little further to the south here, and we can see that. Well, you won't see any mapping changes, but apparently there is activity around to the west of Pavlivka. If we go back to Kenneth Gregg, he says that we have small successes west of Pavlivka. Remember that our and their minefields are huge here. Neither side can make a full attack without being hit by the mines. And just trying to see if you look at the whole of this kind of front line, this is Andrew Perpetua's map. If you see where there are these blue arrows, you can see where there is activity. So around Vuhledar, Pavlivka, then we go on to Velika Novosilka, sort of 5 arrows around there in different areas. And then as we come further down, we come towards Halaypole, and then down to Malatok Machka, south of Orokhiv. Seems to be activity where the Russians or where the Ukrainians lost quite a number of pieces of equipment. They're attacking there again, and then towards Kamyanska as well, in Lubkove area. So that is basically where all the activity is taking place. Let's have a look at some of the claims. So going back to, we'll start, as I said, we've said a little bit about here about Vuhledar and Pavlivka. So we'll continue there. Russian sources are claiming that the Ukrainian forces have begun deploying a significant number of electronic warfare systems along the front line in the Donetsk region. So that would include possibly this Vuhledar area, could also include Velika Novosilka. So they are using an awful lot of electronic warfare systems that have resulted in, quote, huge drone losses by the Russian units, and leading many to believe that the Ukrainian operation in the region is imminent. So there has been some talk that actually the Ukrainians might be prepping up this area for an attack, possibly towards Mariupol. That this might, what you're having at the moment are reconnaissance and force actions taking place all across this front line to try and find a weak point to then exploit. So it might be that the Ukrainians, some people are talking about this, how the Ukrainians might not have actually had a definite route that they were going to take. They might have had preferred routes, and obviously they're going to plan for them, but they need to plan for all sorts of contingencies, because they will need to react to wherever there is a weakness, and wherever there is a weakness, you then pour in your resources. So it could be that they do a lot of this kind of activity and they find out that, oh, right, okay, this is the weakest area, then we're going to have to attack from here, and adapt their plans accordingly. So what else? The Defense Ministry has said that Ukraine has advanced 2 kilometers in multiple directions, up to 2 kilometers in multiple directions, but they face heavy resistance. They face heavy resistance from the Russian troops who are defending pretty well in the area, but also from minefields. There's just a lot of minefields around. I keep saying that because it is that important. But the fact that the Russians are defending well will mean necessarily that they're using their forces to do so, and there are claims that they're basically bringing in their reserve forces to plug these gaps and or repel the Ukrainian attacks in these positions, and that then weakens their forces overall, and that then allows, this is one way of looking at it, then allows the Ukrainians to take advantage opportunistically of areas where they are weaker, given that their forces have been attrited, the Russian forces, that is. So then Russian channels are talking quite a lot, as are Ukrainian channels, about Piatikati. It's become the field of serious battle today, with both infantry and tanks. Near Orokhiv, Robert Turner remains the direction of the main blow. The enemy regrouped, fortified in the grey zone, pulled up the mortars. Western technology is equipped with night vision devices. And then Noel report says, Rebar reports that Ukrainian forces managed to advance into the area between Novodonetsk and Uruzhaini. Fighting is occurring at the outskirts of Uruzhaini, coming from 2 directions, the flank that Rebar is talking about, and the road from Blahadatne along the Mokry Yali River. Okay, let's talk about all those. Let's try and understand what's going on here. So I will come to that, the P village, a little bit later, but let's go back to here. There is still activity south of Velika Novosilka in the same kind of areas as there was yesterday, and moving very slowly towards the south. Activity in Staromayorsky and Uruzhaini. So this is arguably grey area now rather than Russian control. I would put this safely in a grey area, grey zone, and that there are potentially advances to the west of Novodonetsk. So this is the area of activity there, but there also Rivnopil might well be a grey zone as well, as the Russians are trying to defend there quite heavily. The Ukrainians are making inroads there and in Levadny, but very slow going indeed. So Max 23 here has a mapping update, and this is the area we're talking about at the moment. So as you can see, as according to them, Rivnopil is in the grey zone, as well as a village to the south. And all of these three villages here would be in their grey zone, as well as villages to the south of Novodonetsk. So it just depends how you interpret these things. What does control mean? So as according to them, all of this area is kind of grey zone, and Priyutne here is grey zone as well as Rivnopil. So it is slow going. Russians are putting up a lot of defense. Ukrainians don't have control over a lot of these places, but they are being contested. Russian channels then, so now we're going to come, that's pretty much what's going on in Velika Novosilka. I haven't changed my mapping in the area. Indeed, Syriac Maps hasn't really updated since the 15th. Andrew Perpetua, very minor changes here and there. A little bit further to the west, changes, and there were some slight changes around there, but nothing to report home about. As we come towards Marfapil and Drozhnyanka, it appears that there's some activity around Drozhnyanka, but again, not too much detail on that. ISW talks of this area. Yep, no, that was back in Vuhledar. That they have made some advances in Vuhledar and fixed themselves some new positions. That was after they had advanced a kilometre 2 days ago. So yeah, that's what's going on in Vuhledar. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So yeah, anyway, as we come to the west, we get towards Malatok Machka and the area that all those Leopards and Bradleys and that whole event took place. There is activity towards Roberterne. There's activity around Novopokrovka, and again over here in Lobkove towards this village that we keep hearing so much about, Pyatkatki. So that is there where there's fierce fighting taking place. Indeed, that's what Reporting from Ukraine did their video on last night. So as we come on to that, no report says Russian channels report active fighting in the area of Lobkove, Pyatkatki, Zaporizhia axis. Wargonzo reports that Ukrainians have advanced towards that village, and there is a battle on the western outskirts. So that would be, fighting around there. And then Euromaidan Press talks about this by basically every day they go through really reporting from Ukraine's video and turn it into an article. So just to give you the synopsis of what the reporting from Ukraine said is that, as you can see the topographical map in the area, Ukraine are advancing kind of down the low ground towards, so on here you can see the river coming through there. That's the low ground advancing through there into Pyatkatki. And there is some some forest land around there, which is possibly this forest, to be honest. I can't see that it would be anywhere else. So there's talk about taking out a forest area, having it under their control at least for some time, and that was by sending in. If we say, well, see what they say here. Furthermore, the Ukrainians have adopted a new tactic that has proven effective on the Zaporizhia front. They swiftly transport their assault units to the contact line using armored carriers, which quickly retreat, while tanks provide distant fire support. Drone operators assist in assessing the ground situation. I don't know if this is anything like revolutionary, right? This sounds pretty standard tactics to me. This tactic yields better results than direct heavy assaults due to the Russian strategy of creating multiple small defensive positions instead of a single large fortification. It also possibly means that they can get around the problem of mines blowing up huge amounts of equipment really quickly. It necessitates a high mobility of small assault units for optimal attack efficiency. After an hour of continuous fighting, Ukrainians reportedly succeeded in driving the Russians out of the forest, which is a strategically advantageous position. The forest not only allows for the concealment and concentration of assault units near two Russian-controlled settlements, also safeguards Ukrainian flanks against sudden counterattacks from Zerebianki, and that is this settlement there. So this would be advantageous to hold. But as we can see, they weren't able to hold it for too long. Having achieved this initial success, Ukrainian forces prepared reinforcements to further consolidate their gains. Subsequently, they launched another series of attacks. One small assault unit approached the Russians from the northern bank of the river, engaging them and reducing their mobility. Simultaneously, the second assault unit attacked the settlement from the southern bank, specifically from the forest. After intense clashes lasting approximately an hour, Ukrainians managed to push the Russians out the western part of the settlement. Russian sources reported that Russian forces encountered difficulties in repelling the Ukrainian attack, primarily due to the Ukrainians' use of remote anti-armor mine shells to mine roads leading to Russian reserves. Even with the arrival of Russian reserves, they lacked sufficient strength to deliver a decisive blow, resulting in a stalemate. So they called in the attack helicopters, and the attack helicopters, basically the Ka-52s, pushed out the Ukrainians from the forest area. And they were using the air advantage to great effect there. Now the Russians have lost 3 helicopters, and they lost another one yesterday over the last week, as far as I can work out. And it could well be from this area that they lost one of the helicopters. I think they talk. Did they mention it here? I'm not 100% sure, but basically, yeah, they called in the helicopters, and the fighting is ongoing around there. So that is basically what is happening here. If we come out, zoom out, there is essentially the same activity as we've seen over the last 2 or 3 days in all of these positions, with very limited gains, slow going. But that is the nature of this kind of grinding offensive. As I've said for many days now, it's not going to be lightning. Then there is talk about whether the Ukrainians had landed troops on the other side of the river in Novokakhovka and possibly Oleshki, in the islands around Oleshki. Then other people say no, it was actually just drone activity and possibly artillery and whatnot. So I don't know exactly what's happening here. Kenneth Griggs talks a little bit about that, saying yes, talking about, where are you? I will find that. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah, he's talking about sort of being opportunistic, suck it and see. Let's take our commando raid in Novokakhovka as an example. The Russians started shelling the area with artillery, missiles, and helicopters. 2 of these were shot down. So he's claiming that helicopters are shot down in that area, and how many of their own were killed in the artillery attack is still unknown. At the same time, it ties up troops for the Russians. A commando group can sometimes get more done than a whole battalion. I don't know if our people are still there, but if they have withdrawn, they will return as soon as possible. One thing that has caused confusion. No, sorry. It goes on to say something else. So his claim is that commandos might well have crossed there. Helicopters are called in. Russians have lost 2 helicopters in this area. I don't know exactly where the helicopters have been lost, but as I say, 3 in the last week, and it could well be 1 in this area, and maybe a couple in the Kherson area. But again, take what he says with a pinch of salt. So that's what's going on along the front line, which is not an awful lot, but it is slow and grinding progress for the Ukrainians. The question is, are the ratios in their favor? They report that they are, but of course they would do. Trying to work out what the most accurate version of events is often very difficult. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching the update. Take care, and I'll speak to you later.